"Can I eat with you?" the black girl asked. The billionaire's heart broke hearing her words. "Hello, wonderful friends. Welcome back to another heartwarming Stories Always journey. How have you been since our last heart-tugging tale? If you believe that small acts can change lives, drop a comment below right now. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story of unexpected love and compassion. The late-night subway rattled through the city's veins, its fluorescent lights flickering like a pulse. A young woman in a threadbare coat clutched a cheap paper tray of half-eaten leftovers, stir-fried vegetables clinging to rice. She glanced around, cheeks hollow from hunger, yet she forced her spine upright, chin lifted. Pride was her armor. Her name was Maya Clark. 22, motherless, balancing 2 part-time jobs and evening classes in social work. Each day blurred into the next. The bracing chill of pre-dawn on her face, the tiresome lull of the subway car, the indifferent gaze of passengers avoiding eye contact. Maya never asked for help. She'd learned too young that kindness was conditional. Tonight, she'd scraped together enough for a single tray, her only luxury. She tucked a loose curl behind her ear and breathed in, coffee-stained air mixed with the metallic scent of the rails. Relief warred with dread at the thought of returning to her one-room apartment. The peeling wallpaper, the rattling radiator that never warmed, the rent notice taped to the door. She'd smile at her landlord, assure him the money was coming next week, though she wasn't sure how. Stepping onto the sidewalk, Maya headed toward the glowing offices of Titan Corp, a building that shimmered like a beacon of possibility. She paused at the revolving doors, fingers tightening on her tray. "It's just food," she whispered to herself. "But I can't waste it." Clutching her courage, she pushed inside. On the 40th floor, glass walls revealed a skyline of lights. Executive assistants in crisp suits hurried past. Crisp, calculated, controlled. At a mahogany desk sat Alexander Hartwell, billionaire CEO and founder of the world's most powerful tech conglomerate. He adjusted his cufflinks and surveyed the room in a silent ritual. His latest acquisition deal had closed that morning, $2.7 billion. He leaned back in his leather chair, staring out at the city as if expecting something new to appear. But inside, a familiar emptiness gnawed at him. A soft chime interrupted his brooding. His personal assistant, Serena, peeked in. "Lunch is ready in the boardroom, sir." He nodded. "Thank you, Serena. I'll be there shortly." As he stood, Alexander caught sight of an open invitation card on his desk. Annual Winter Gala, dress black tie. He remembered last year's gala. The champagne glowed golden under crystal chandeliers, yet he'd slipped away early, unable to bear the hollow laughter and empty flirtations. He pocketed the card and moved toward the elevator. In the mirrored walls, he caught his reflection. Perfect dark hair, tailored suit, a hint of fatigue in his eyes. He straightened his tie and stepped inside. Maya slipped into the silent boardroom doorway, unannounced. The long table gleamed under soft lights. A catered spread of smoked salmon, artisanal breads, and designer desserts lined one side. Security glanced at her tray, then at her face. A young woman out of place. Alexander entered, pausing as the door clicked shut behind him. He frowned at her presence. "This room is private," he said without surprise, as if he'd been waiting. Maya's heart thumped. She swallowed. I just need somewhere quiet to eat." Her words trembled. She would never have asked if she'd had any other choice. A hush fell. He studied her, her worn coat, the shadows under her eyes. In that moment, the distance between them, between his world of plenty and her world of want, felt impossible to bridge. Yet her quiet dignity stirred something dormant within him. A memory of empty birthday cakes, of boardrooms devoid of laughter, of moments when he, too, wished for simple company. Slowly, Alexander gestured to an unadorned wooden bench tucked into a corner. "Sit," he said, voice low. Maya's breath caught. She dipped her head and carried her tray across the polished floor, every step echoing in the silent room. When she reached the bench, she sat stiffly, leaving a small gap between them. He placed his leather briefcase down, unfolded his napkin, and sat opposite her. Their trays were worlds apart, his silver-plated dishes and crystal glasses beside her crumpled paper. Yet their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the grandeur faded. Two lonely souls, facing one another in a silent plea, connection. What would you do if you saw someone in need right in front of you? Share your thoughts below. And if this moment moved you, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for the full journey. Maya gathered her tray and rose, steeling herself to leave. Yet Alexander reached out, momentarily halting her retreat. He cleared his throat, a subtle tremor in his normally steady voice. "Wait," he said. I'm sorry if I was abrupt. Please stay. You don't have to go." She paused, hand on the tray's edge. In his eyes she saw genuine uncertainty. No lofty airs, just a man unaccustomed to caring so openly. She nodded, sinking back onto the bench. He offered her a bottled water from his own tray. She accepted, fingers brushing his. Neither withdrew. A hush fell, punctuated only by the faint hum of the building's ventilation. In that quiet, Maya felt her pulse slow. He studied the label, as if curious what sustenance she chose over designer fare. Their differences stretched wide, but in that silent moment, they felt smaller than the bench beneath them. The revolving doors closed behind her, sealing the mansion-like lobby from the crisp night air. Her footsteps echoed against the marble as she descended the building's grand staircase, her mind replaying their shared silence. She tucked the empty tray in the lobby trash and headed back into the city's grit. On the street, neon signs buzzed. Taxis rattled past. She clutched her bag and pulled her coat tighter, unsettled by how a stranger's kindness could feel so profound. As she walked, memories surfaced. Her mother's laughter over a cracked kitchen table, the taste of homemade stew, the solidarity she once felt. Life had become so transactional. One meal for one shift. But tonight, it felt imbued with possibility. Arriving at her building, a creaking tenement, she fumbled with the keys. Inside, the single bulb cast long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Maya set her single plate of leftover rice on the chipped counter and stared at the darkness beyond the kitchen doorway. Her stomach rumbled, but she no longer felt the sharp pang of hunger. Something softer, gentler, hummed in its place, the warmth of being seen. Up in his private elevator, Alexander replayed their encounter. He closed his eyes and saw her. The way her brow furrowed as she chose words, the quiet strength in her posture. He stepped into his penthouse loft, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city's glow. A bottle of vintage champagne waited on ice, but he turned away. He wandered to the expansive dining table, set for one. The crystalline candelabra stood without flame. He picked up a single white rose, imported, expensive, took in its fragrance, then placed it back. In his solitude, he recognized the hollowness of opulence when unshared. Alexander retreated to his study, flipping through a photo album tucked away on a bookshelf. Images of boardroom signings, award ceremonies, and perfectly posed charity galas stared back at him. He paused on a picture of himself as a boy, sitting alone at a small table with a lone cupcake and a single candle. His parents stood behind him, distant smiles barely touching their eyes. He closed the album, a single tear tracing down his cheek. He hadn't felt that kind of loneliness in decades. The next morning, Maya stepped into her classroom. She tutored neighborhood children 2 evenings a week. As she helped a shy boy sound out his letters, her mind flicked to the previous night's meal. She wondered if he'd thought about her at all today. She pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the boy's triumphant smile when he read Cat for the first time. Meanwhile, Alexander strode into a high-stakes boardroom meeting. Executives paused as he entered, cueing their presentations. Yet his mind drifted to that wooden bench and the warmth of her presence. When a junior analyst offered him his morning coffee, double-shot espresso, he declined. Instead, he requested a simple black tea, no sugar. A small gesture, yet to him, it felt revolutionary. As the meeting commenced, he found himself more attuned to the voices around the table. The analyst's earnest remarks, the accountant's nervous clearance of her throat, rather than zoning out behind strategy slides. It was as if his senses had recalibrated overnight. That evening, the stage is set. 2 lives have briefly intersected, leaving indelible marks. Maya returns to the silent lobby of Titan Corp, drawn by a curiosity she can't name. Alexander lingers near the wooden bench, gazing at the spot where her shadow fell. Though neither speaks, both sense that something has begun, a fragile bridge between hunger and compassion. Have you ever felt an unexpected connection with a stranger? Tell us your story in the comments. Your experience might inspire someone today. And if this tale is resonating, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The next day, the atrium felt different. Morning light poured through the glass ceiling, turning every polished surface molten gold. Servants rearranged the lavish breakfast spread, But Maya Clark slipped past unnoticed, her eyes fixed on the simple wooden bench tucked in the corner. She carried the same paper tray, today's lunch, a modest chicken salad wrap and a bottle of water. Her heart hammered. She wasn't sure why she'd returned, but she knew she had to. Alexander Hartwell stepped into the atrium just as the clock chimed noon. He halted mid-stride when he saw her there, shoulders hunched, as if bracing against an invisible storm. In his hand, he held a porcelain plate, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, a slice of dark rye toast. He paused, surprised by the flutter in his chest. Without thinking, he crossed the marble floor and sat down beside her on the bench. The moment felt sacred. Two worlds tethered by that unadorned wooden plank. Maya's eyes widened. She hadn't expected him to return. She tucked a stray curl behind her ear and lifted her gaze. "You came back," she said softly. He offered a small smile, one that didn't reach his eyes but felt genuine. "I wanted to see how you were." Maya opened her wrap. The tang of vinaigrette mingled with the musty scent of the atrium's ornamental plants. She hesitated before taking a bite, her teeth crunching the lettuce so softly it sounded like a secret. Alexander watched, noticing how her knuckles whitened on the paper tray. He sighed, realizing for the first time that privilege was measured not just in wealth, but in the luxury of never fearing your next meal. He lifted his fork with deliberate care. The strawberries on his plate looked like rubies against the white china. He stabbed a berry, brought it to his lips, then paused. With a sudden impulse, he offered it to Maya. She stared at the berry, then at him, confusion flickering in her dark eyes. Pride warred with hunger. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. When her fingers brushed his, a spark ignited between them. Warm, electric. She bit into the strawberry, the sweetness exploding on her tongue. Her eyes fluttered closed as the simple pleasure washed over her. In that moment, she tasted wonder. Not just the fruit, but the kindness that offered it. A lump rose in her throat. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but words felt clumsy. Instead, she swallowed, pushed the tray aside, and leaned back against the bench. Vulnerability pulsed through her veins. She was letting someone see her need. Watching her savor the strawberry, he felt two truths collide. The exhilaration of generosity and the terror of emotional exposure. His throat tightened. He realized that power felt empty when wielded across a chasm of loneliness. The sight of her, strength and fragility entwined, moved him more than any boardroom victory ever had. Suddenly, the atrium doors slid open with a hiss. A pair of security officers entered, eyeing Maya warily. Their polished shoes clicked against the marble floor. Alexander's chest tightened. Protocol clashed with impulse. Before the guards could step forward, he stood. "This is Ms. Clark," he said firmly, voice echoing across the hall. "She's my guest." Maya's head snapped up, alarm in her gaze. The officers exchanged glances, then bowed their heads and retreated, murmuring apologies. Alexander turned back to Maya, cheeks flushed. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he whispered, lowering himself back onto the bench. She shook her head, eyes bright. "No, I needed to see it. That you'd defend me." The atrium air felt suddenly still, punctuated by the distant drip of a decorative fountain. Maya noticed a bead of sweat at his hairline and brushed it away with the back of her hand. An intimate gesture born of concern, not etiquette. His pulse fluttered under her fingertips. Their trays lay forgotten between them like bridges waiting to be crossed. For a moment, the hum of the city outside faded, leaving only their shallow breaths and the soft padding of footsteps in the corridor beyond. Neither spoke for what felt like an eternity. Words seemed inadequate to convey the storm within them. Yet in their silence, everything was said. Gratitude, fear, hope, and the bitter aftertaste of pride. The subtext weighed heavy. He wanted to protect her, to offer more than strawberries. She wanted to let someone in but feared losing herself. Finally, Maya broke the silence. Her voice trembled. "Why are you doing this?" Alexander's lips parted, but no words came. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. When he opened them, they shone with unshed emotion. I don't know," he admitted. "I just can't stop." Maya's gaze softened. She lifted her hand and placed it over his. "Then stay," she whispered. "Stay until we finish." He nodded, swallowing hard. And in that charged instant, both of them sensed the ground shifting beneath their feet, hope creeping in where there was once only isolation. "We've set the central event in full. The shared meal, the guard's interruption, and the raw vulnerability that follows. In the next section, we'll explore how each reacts to this spark: resistance, denial, and the first fractures in their defenses. Maya and Alexander sat side by side, the remnants of their lunches pushed aside. An electric hush lingered in the air, as if the atrium itself were holding its breath. The guard's footsteps receded, leaving only the soft whisper of the fountain's water droplets in the background. Her heart pounded so fiercely she worried he'd hear it. She stared at the elaborate banquet table across the hall, platters of smoked salmon, stacks of pastries, and remembered the stark contrast between that abundance and her paper tray. Yet none of it tempted her now. All she wanted was this fragile moment of equality, marked by his hand covering hers. A tremor ran through her fingers. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to steady her breathing. Why am I letting him see me like this? She wondered. Why does it feel right? She'd never allowed anyone to hold her hand in public, let alone a stranger twice her age. And yet his touch was gentle, almost apologetic, as if he too feared overstepping an invisible boundary. He felt as though his carefully constructed world had tilted on its axis. Watching her lean into his palm, he realized that this simple contact was more intoxicating than any boardroom triumph. Luxury had always been about control, but he now saw control as the very thing that had kept him lonely. He inhaled the atrium's floral scent, but it was her warmth he could still taste. He swallowed hard before speaking. "Thank you for staying," he managed, voice low. She offered a soft nod, eyes misting. Neither spoke for a long moment. A distant chime from the security desk signaled the hour. Staff shuffled past, one or two glancing curiously at the wooden bench, but Maya and Alexander remained cocooned in their shared bubble. Maya's wrap of lettuce and chicken sat half-eaten, the vinaigrette staining the paper. The bite marks left by her earlier hesitation now marked it like a map of her emotional territory. Alexander's pristine plate bore a single uneaten berry. Between them, the tray stands as a silent testament to their reversed fortunes. She having tasted his luxury, he having tasted her humility. He reached across and slid his plate closer to her. "You can have more," he said quietly. She hesitated, memories of her mother's teachings echoing in her mind. Never take more than you need. But then she lifted her gaze to his, saw the earnest invitation, and nodded. She reached for the plate, and paused, as if realizing that this wasn't charity. This was connection. Their eyes met, and time slowed. In that glance, unspoken emotions flickered: gratitude, curiosity, a hint of fear. He watched the way her lips parted when she tasted the fruit, how her shoulders relaxed ever so slightly. She watched the slight tremor in his fingers as he poured them each a second glass of water. Neither spoke, but everything shifted. The thrill of the forbidden lingered. A billionaire sharing food with a stranger. Yet the deeper current was redemptive, suggesting that human kindness transcends rank and fortune. Maya finally broke the hush. Her voice was soft, steady. "Why do you do this? Why risk so much for a stranger?" Alexander's gaze dropped. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, an instinctive gesture of care. "Because I see you," he answered, "and I remember what it's like to be invisible." Her breath caught. The shard of vulnerability in his confession mirrored her own. She realized in that moment that his wealth had been both his armor and his prison. Emotional stakes solidified. Her stake, dignity versus survival. Every bite now felt like a gamble. His stake, vulnerability versus solitude. Every act of kindness threatened his carefully maintained composure. As the clock neared 1, the atrium lights dimmed slightly, an unnoticed signal that the regular lunch hour was ending. The staff would begin clearing the tables soon. Maya glanced at her watch, eyes wide. "They're closing down lunch service," she said, voice trembling. Alexander rose slowly. He extended his hand to help her up. "Let's go before they turn off the lights." She stood, leaving the last slice of berry untouched on his plate. They walked past the silent banquet, side by side, a striking tableau of contrasts made harmonious by their shared vulnerability. Neither one is ready to fully confront what this moment means. Will Maya retreat into her pride once the lights go down? Will Alexander pull back into his fortress of wealth? Have you ever held back when an opportunity for kindness arose, either by giving or accepting? Share your experience below. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. The atrium's lights brightened once more, and staff returned to whisk away the luxury spread. Maya and Alexander paused at the wooden bench, their silhouettes framed by towering glass walls. The world around them was returning to its usual cadence, clockwork efficiency and polished routines. But between them, an uneasy tension simmered. Maya's fingers curled around the strap of her satchel. The afternoon chill dripped through the glass ceiling, urging her to reclaim her coat and leave this gilded cavern. She cleared her throat, looking anywhere but at Alexander. "Thank you for lunch," she said quietly, voice edged with steel. "I should get going." Alexander's chest tightened. He took a half step forward. "Maya." She lifted a finger, a polite but firm gesture. "No, really. I appreciate it. But I have to." Her words trailed off as she lifted her tray of discarded wrappers. Each rustle of the paper felt loud, as if announcing her exit. She tucked the tray under her arm and turned, pressing her lips into a thin line. In that moment, her pride flared. She would not be a charity case or a pity story. Better to break this connection now than let it define her. Alexander watched her shoulders stiffen as she walked away. The distance between them expanded with every step. She reached the edge of the atrium, but then paused, hand on the glass door. For a fleeting second, she hesitated, as if torn between retreat and return. Then she slipped out, disappearing into the corridor. Maya's departure hit Alexander like physical force. He stood rooted to the bench, his hands still outstretched where hers had been. The polished floor beneath him felt suddenly slippery. When the glass doors slid shut, the echoes of her footsteps faded, and so did his certainty. He closed his eyes, inhaling sharply. The warmth of her presence had vanished, replaced by the cavern's vast emptiness. He retrieved his own discarded napkin and pressed it to his mouth, swallowing hard. Then he straightened, smoothing his jacket as if reclaiming his professional poise. Stepping away from the bench, he rounded on a passing assistant. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. I need the next hour free." His voice held a tight control, but inside his heart thundered. He didn't understand why he felt so off balance. He had survived boardroom defeats and hostile takeovers, but losing her company knocked him further than any business loss. Returning to her part-time job at the cafe, Maya found the aroma of coffee and pastries both comforting and painful. Co-workers chattered about the upcoming rent deadline and the landlord's stern email. Maya offered to take an extra shift to cover rent, all the while she couldn't stop replaying Alexander's worried eyes. Doubt gnawed at her. Had she been foolish to trust her gut, twice, in a stranger's kindness? When a regular customer greeted her cheerfully, she plastered on a grateful smile, but felt hollow. She touched her satchel, remembering the weight of her untouched strawberry earlier. The memory clamored. "You chose hope. Was it a mistake?" She shook her head, refusing to give voice to that fear. Up in his private study, Alexander sat behind his imposing desk, reviewing merger documents. His phone buzzed incessantly, board members, investors, assistants, all demanding attention. He ignored them, his vision blurring as he stared at the screen. Every headline about stock prices and market shifts felt trivial now. His hands trembled as he tried to sign a contract digitally, canceling out the crisp signatures with a single jittery stroke. The building's security chief called, reminding him of an incoming delegation from overseas. "Sir, shall I prepare the conference suite?" The chief's tone was respectful, but laced with expectation. Alexander pressed his palms to his eyes. "Not today," he said, voice low. "I'm indisposed." Back at her small apartment, Maya sat on her narrow bed and stared at the blank wall. The evening light filtered through grimy curtains. She pulled her knees up, hugging them tight, and closed her eyes. "You have your pride," she told herself. "Trust no one." But the memory of his hand over hers burned in her mind. Vulnerability felt like both her salvation and her curse. In the penthouse, Alexander paced between floor-to-ceiling windows. Night had fallen, and the city's millions of lights flickered like distant stars. He ran a hand through his hair and halted at a framed photo on the sill. Himself at 12, slumped in a high chair at a birthday party that felt more like a board meeting. He inhaled a shaky breath. "I can't go back to that." He placed the photo face down and stepped away, only to hear a soft knock at his door. It was Serena, his assistant, cautious but concerned. "Sir, you asked for the hour free?" Her eyes flicked to his tense posture. Alexander forced a calm tone. "I'm fine, Serena. Please tell the delegation I'm delayed." Her concern hung in the air. As she left, he realized isolation didn't create strength. It bred desperation. The next morning, Maya arrived at the atrium again, this time for an official meeting about her social work scholarship. She'd managed to secure an appointment with one of Titan Corp's corporate social responsibility officers. She carried resumes and references in a neat folder, her professional armor. Alexander entered moments later, flanked by executives. He froze when he saw her, folder in hand, polished shoes, determined gaze. Their eyes locked across the marble floor. Maya offered a curt nod and headed toward the meeting room. Alexander watched her go, torn between approaching and staying with his delegation. Protocol 1. He followed his team, leaving her in their wake. Maya felt a pang of betrayal. Not personal, but institutional. The same building that sheltered her vulnerability now housed the mechanisms of her rejection. She squared her shoulders, swallowed hard, and knocked on the meeting room door. Both protagonists have recoiled. Maya into self-reliance and Alexander into business as usual. Yet fate, and perhaps the building's next power outage, may force them back together. Will they allow pride to eclipse possibility, or will an unforeseen twist bind them again? Let's find out. Late that afternoon, thunder grumbled over the city. In the Titan glass atrium, dark clouds raced across the sky, blotting out sunlight. Without warning, the building shuddered as lights flickered and alarms chimed softly. A female voice echoed through concealed speakers. Attention all tenants and guests. Due to an unexpected electrical fault, the elevator system is offline. Please proceed calmly to the nearest service area for shelter. Maintenance crews are en route. Staff members exchanged uneasy glances. The grand atrium, once so inviting, felt suddenly constricting. Maya, already en route to her meeting, found herself ushered by a uniformed attendant. She clutched her folder, heart racing. Around her, executives and interns murmured in confusion. This was hardly the day she'd planned for. A chance at funding her scholarship disrupted by a power outage. Alexander, in the middle of presenting to overseas investors, felt the lights dim mid-slide. The projector flickered, then died. Laptops closed with alert tones. He excused himself, voice steady but urgent. It appears we have a technical issue. Please follow protocol. He rose, smoothing his jacket, and led his delegation toward the service corridors. Fate, it seemed, was stirring the pot. Within minutes, Maya and Alexander found themselves herded into the same service kitchen, a compact, utilitarian room with stainless steel counters and industrial shelving. The only light came from a single emergency fixture on the ceiling. They stood mere feet apart, surrounded by catering carts and boxes of spare plates. Maya's pulse thundered as she realized who else was here. She'd have preferred the meeting room's glass walls and polished floor. Anywhere but this cramped space with a stranger whose kindness had both healed and hurt her. Alexander inhaled the scent of bleach and cold steel, trying to collect his composure. He spotted Maya's folder on a countertop and picked it up gently. "Your meeting?" he asked quietly. She glanced at him, eyebrows knitting. "Yes, not the best timing." He gave a crooked smile. "I guess we're both inconvenienced." Her defenses flickered. She closed the gap between them and retrieved her folder. Seems so. They're thrown together by circumstance, unable to avoid each other and forced to confront their friction. A low hum signaled that the generator was struggling to maintain basic power. Maya tapped her foot nervously, folding and unfolding her hands. Alexander crouched to inspect a stack of boxed bottled water. "Looks like we'll be here a while. Want some water?" She hesitated, old instinct to refuse flashed, but then sighed. "Yes, please." He handed her a bottle. Their fingers brushed briefly. She accepted it and took a small sip, eyes locked on the floor. He straightened, watching her. Silence stretched, broken only by the distant crack of thunder. The storm outside rattled the windows. Maya shivered despite her coat. Alexander shrugged off his blazer and draped it over her shoulders. "You'll catch cold." She stiffened, pride flaring, but didn't shrug it off. Instead, she let the warmth settle around her. A maintenance engineer passed by, struggling with a malfunctioning control panel. Alexander approached him. "Need a hand," he offered, voice echoing in the tight space. The engineer blinked. "Sir, I'm fine." "Let me help," Alexander insisted, rolling up his sleeves. Maya watched as he knelt beside the panel, tools in hand. He adjusted wiring, tracing circuits with surprising deftness. Behind the professional facade, his education in problem-solving extended beyond boardroom strategy to practical repair. Maya crossed her arms but leaned closer, intrigued. You know how to fix these? He glanced at her, a self-deprecating smile forming. I like to think I'm handy. When the panel clicked back to life, the overhead light brightened slightly. The engineer offered a relieved nod, and Alexander rose, wiping sweat from his brow. Maya's eyes shone. Impressive. He shrugged. Unexpected skill set. As the generator stabilized, a flicker of normalcy returned. The emergency light softened. Maya and Alexander found themselves side by a countertop, each holding a cup of lukewarm coffee from the catering stash. They sipped in unison, sharing a quiet moment. Maya spoke first, voice low. Thank you for earlier and now for helping. He looked at her. You'd have done the same. She shook her head. Probably not. He gestured toward the coffee maker. Well, I do have experience with staff hospitality. She laughed, a clear, vibrant sound that filled the cramped kitchen. I'd like to see you handle a 200-cup order at a Saturday farmer's market. He returned her grin. Challenge accepted. Emotional goal. Through cooperation, respect begins to replace tension. They see facets of each other beyond first impressions. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Maya's thoughtful expression. She studied Alexander's profile, the crease at the corner of his eye when he smiled, the way he listened intently. Her heartbeat settled into something calmer. Alexander noticed how the lamplight softened her features. He realized how her guarded posture slowly unfurled in this intimate setting. Her laughter, a rarity, tugged at a part of him that had forgotten joy. For a moment, they simply stood together, two figures in a tiny room, connected not by opulence or survival, but by shared purpose. Endure the lockdown and help the people around them. As thunder rolled again, Maya glanced at the service door. Do you think they'll get the elevators working soon? Alexander poured them each another coffee. I hope so, but maybe this is exactly where we're meant to be. She raised an eyebrow. Philosophical during a blackout? He smiled softly. Sometimes constraints illuminate truths. She sipped her coffee and nodded. We make the best of it, right? He met her gaze, holding it. Exactly. Forced into proximity, they've begun to see each other's humanity and skill. But what past wounds will surface when they're finally safe? Next, someone will uncover a secret that changes the stakes and tests their fragile trust. Continue watching to find out. The service kitchen felt unexpectedly cozy after the storm's fury. Emergency lights cast a gentle glow over the stainless steel shelves, where boxes of supplies lined the walls like silent witnesses. Maya removed Alexander's blazer from her shoulders and draped it over a stack of plates. The smell of coffee lingered, mingling with the faint tang of metal. She watched him gather stray utensils into a tray. Her gaze drifted to a small photograph pinned to the maintenance crew's bulletin board. A grainy black and white image of a young boy clutching a single balloon at a crowded fair. Something about the boy's solemn expression mirrored Alexander's own loneliness. Curiosity pricked her. She stepped closer. Do you know him? She asked, voice soft. He paused, stilling at the sight. Heat colored his cheeks as he recognized the photo. That's me, he whispered, eyes on the print. When I was 7. Maya's breath caught. She remembered the way his eyes had softened in the atrium, but now she saw a deeper ache. That was your birthday? She asked gently. He nodded. My parents threw a celebration, but they were more interested in deals than cupcakes. I stood by the cotton candy machine. Nobody spoke to me. The kids ran past, popping balloons. I held on tight to mine, as if it could carry me away. A low thunder grumbled in the distance, nature's echo of his childhood storm. Maya unpinned the photo and handed it to him. He traced the edges, voice quiet. I see that kid every time I look at a crowd and wonder if anyone's really there for me. Alexander folded the photograph and set it aside. He studied Maya's face in the dim light. The way her brow furrowed in empathy, the gentle curve of her lips. Your turn, he said softly, nodding toward her. Maya pressed her arms around herself. The blazer's warmth had left, but its comfort lingered. She began, voice catching. When I was 15, my mom got sick. No insurance. Hospital bills piled up. I dropped out of school to work 2 jobs. I learned to cook on a gas stove that sometimes backfired. My mom, she passed away before I could save enough. Her eyes glistened as she swallowed. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Alexander exhaled slowly, the weight of her words settling between them. She lifted her satchel and withdrew a faded photograph tucked in its inner pocket. It showed a younger Maya and her mother, smiling in front of a tiny diner. On the diner's counter sat a single wooden bench, worn, paint peeling. "I waited for her there every afternoon," Maya explained. "She'd promised to bring ice cream when she got off work." Her fingers traced the bench's outline. "But she never came." Alexander's eyes softened. He leaned forward, pointing to the photo. "Our benches, yours at that diner, mine in the atrium, both wooden, unadorned. Places meant for sitting and waiting. But sometimes what waits for us is not what we imagined." Her breath hitched as the connection settled between them. These benches, simple, functional, had been stages for their loneliness, silent monuments to longing. Thunder ceased. The emergency lights flickered as power returned to the kitchen. The hum of the main generator stilled, replaced by the software of systems rebooting. As the door unlatched with a click, their fragile sanctuary opened to the bustle of staff returning. The contrast stunned them, the ordinary world pouring back in. Alexander rose, heart heavy with confession. He offered Maya his hand. "I'm sorry I never told you this. I've spent my life building walls." His voice wavered. "I forgot what it meant to just sit and wait with someone." Maya placed her hand in his, warmth returning. "Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner about my mom." They stood in silence, hands clasped, amid the renewed chaos of the kitchen. Two people bound by shared pain and the simple power of empathy. Have you ever discovered a hidden connection with someone you barely knew? Share your story in the comments below. If this moment spoke to your heart, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story of unexpected healing. By the time the kitchen service doors swung open fully, the late afternoon sun had broken through the clouds. Warm slanted light spilled across the stainless steel counters where Maya and Alexander still stood side by side, hands slowly separating from their earlier clasp. The hum of the atrium systems returned. The quiet buzz of air handlers, distant footsteps, the soft murmur of displaced staff. Yet between them, a serenity lingered. Maya took a deep breath, closing her eyes against the glare. "I never thought a blackout would feel comforting," she admitted, voice soft. Alexander folded his arms, leaning against the counter. "Sometimes losing power is what lets us see each other clearly," he replied. Her lips curved in a tentative smile, one that reached her eyes. He noticed a faint dimple appear on her left cheek, and for the first time, he felt something like lightness in his chest. In the corner, a lonely box of powdered sugar packets sat abandoned. Maya picked one up and shook it at him playfully. "Want to make our own marshmallows out of these?" He laughed, a rich, warm sound that seemed to fill the cramped space. "Only if you help me figure out how." She hesitated, then shook a second packet, sending a small puff of sugar into the air. It dusted her hair and his sleeve. They both froze for a moment, then burst into genuine laughter. Maya reached up, brushing powdered sugar from his lapel. Each gentle movement felt intimate but natural, as if they'd known each other far longer than a few shared meals. Their laughter subsided into a comfortable silence. Alexander retrieved 2 paper towels and handed one to Maya. She dabbed at her hair, then handed it back. He cleared his throat. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to be terrified of making a fool of myself in public. Notice how I never ordered the coffee when I first offered." Maya tilted her head. "I thought you were just being considerate." He shook his head. "I was scared you'd say no, like with the lunch. I've spent years hiding behind my suit and my title. But with you, I wanted to just be Alexander, not Mr. Hartwell Incorporated." She studied his profile in the glowing light. Maya paused, searching for the right words. "I've spent so long believing help always comes at a cost. With you, it doesn't feel like charity. It feels human." A soft current of connection passed between them, a silent acknowledgement that both were offering their true selves. The maintenance engineer returned, announcing that the corridors were clear and the elevators operational. Staff began filing back into the kitchen, reclaiming their carts and trays. Maya and Alexander stepped aside, hands brushing as they moved. Outside, the atrium doors opened onto cool afternoon air. They paused on the threshold. Sunlight glinted off the marble floor, reflecting patterns onto their faces. Alexander turned to her. "Thank you for trusting me," he said, voice low. Maya's eyes glistened. "Thank you for the blazer, for the water, for everything." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, two souls newly unguarded, aware of how rare this ease felt. As they walked back into the atrium together, Maya noticed the wooden bench where it all began. The spot looked smaller now, less significant, like a chapter already in the past. Alexander glanced at it, and then at her. "Shall we find a new place to sit next time?" he asked with a shy smile. She returned his smile with warmth. "I'd like that." In their shared glance lay the promise of deeper understanding, and the knowledge that their journey was far from over. What simple moment has ever given you unexpected joy? Share it below. You might reconnect with that feeling all over again. If this act of bonding touched your heart, hit like and subscribe to witness how their connection will face its toughest test. The late afternoon sun had faded to a muted glow by the time Maya and Alexander exited the service kitchen. They walked side by side through the atrium, the gilt fixtures and polished marble reflecting their interwoven hopes. Every passerby seemed oblivious to their burgeoning bond, a silent testament to the gulf still yawning beneath the veneer of civility. Yet for them, each step crackled with possibility. They paused at the wooden bench where it had all begun. Dust motes danced in a beam of light that filtered through the atrium's high windows, and Maya's heart fluttered at the memory of that first question. "Can I eat with you?" She looked at Alexander, ready to share a gentle smile of gratitude, but found his face strangely drawn, his eyes distant. "Are you all right?" she asked, voice soft. Alexander cleared his throat. "Yes," he said, but his tone was clipped. He glanced at the bench as if seeing it for the first time. I have to step out for a moment." Before Maya could respond, he turned and strode away, shoulders squared. She stared after him, confusion and hurt mingling in her chest. His abrupt departure felt like a cold gust snuffing out a flame. Section 1. The Misguided Joke. An hour later, Maya found herself back at Titan Corp. This time as a guest for Alexander's corporate gala. He had insisted she attend, presenting it as a celebration of the new community dining initiative he'd launched in her honor. She donned her best dress, simple, elegant, a soft blue that complemented her skin, and allowed herself a moment of pride as she stepped beneath the glittering chandeliers. But the opulence of the grand ballroom only exacerbated her unease. Crystal goblets tinkled in polite conversation. Laughter echoed against the frescoed ceiling. Maya drifted along the periphery, clutching a flute of champagne she had barely dared sip, when she spotted Alexander at the center of a semicircle of executives and journalists. He stood before a gleaming podium, a practiced smile on his lips. Maya moved closer, listening as a reporter asked, "Mr. Hartwell, what inspired you to fund this initiative?" Alexander cleared his throat and leaned forward, addressing the crowd. "Well, to be honest," he began, smile twisting into a playful smirk, "I realized that half the world lives on caviar while the other half scrapes by on leftovers. And as someone who's dined on both, I thought it was only fair to even the scales." He chuckled, and the assembled executives tittered at his wit. Maya's stomach twisted. A flush of embarrassment crept over her cheeks. He was joking, but at her expense. The subtext was clear. She represented the other half. His words dripped with condescension beneath the pretense of humor. Gasps of laughter rippled through the crowd. One aide whispered to another, "Isn't it just like him to make it about the money?" She realized then that before the gala, Alexander had framed her story as a charming anecdote, something to humanize the billionaire icon. And in doing so, he'd sacrificed her dignity for applause. As the laughter swelled, Maya's chest constricted. She raised her champagne flute, sealing her trembling lips around the golden liquid. Without hesitation, she turned on her heel and fled the ballroom. Heels clicking rapidly on the marble floor, each step fueled by shame and fury. Outside, she stumbled into the cool night air, pressing her back against a stone column beneath the grand portico. The gala music throbbed behind closed doors, the muffled bass a cruel heartbeat echoing her own. Maya buried her face in her hands, hot tears mingling with the cold breeze. How could he? She thought, voice cracking silently. After everything, he'd still see me as a spectacle. The memory of his supportive hand in the service kitchen, of his protective stance against security, dissolved into a mocking echo of the reporter's laughter. I was never an equal, just an exotic prop for his philanthropy. She sank to the cold stone, legs pulled to her chest. The pressure of the night swallowed her courage, leaving only raw hurt. Somewhere beyond the glass doors, the crowd applauded, oblivious to the person broken outside. Maya pressed her back against the column, blinking through tears, and vowed she would never again let him see her weakness. Inside, Alexander's speech had ended. He raised his glass to the roaring applause, but his smile faltered. He glanced toward the exit and saw the gap on the dance floor where Maya had been standing. His brow furrowed, but he turned back to the cheering crowd and raised his hand in acknowledgement. The crowd's adulation felt hollow. The missing warmth of Maya's presence yanked at his chest. Maya remained on the cold stone, oblivious to the car service summoned by Alexander's assistant. She clutched the ends of her thin shawl, wrapping it tighter, as if warding off more than the chill. The night air stung her cheeks, but the pain was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. Across the road, Alexander stood on the balcony overlooking the portico, hands gripping the wrought iron railing. Funeral music spilled from inside, soft strings heralding the next speaker. Yet the chords in his chest were discordant. He pressed his forehead against cool iron, closing his eyes. What have I done? He wondered. He replayed the joke, once intended as light-hearted, now revealed as insensitive, cruel. He felt her absence like a wound. The gala, the speeches, the accolades. None of it mattered without her. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over her name, but no words offered themselves. Pride, that old friend, choked his throat. He slipped his phone back into his pocket and turned away, swallowed by the crowds pouring out into the night. The next morning, Maya refused to pick up Alexander's call. Too many messages piled up in her inbox. I'm sorry, Maya. Please let me explain. She left them unread, stepping into her cramped apartment with a forwarded boarding pass for early morning classes at the community college. She buried herself in routine, coffee at dawn, lectures at 9, library shifts in the afternoon. She refused to think of the gala, the laughter, the taste of champagne that had suddenly soured in her mouth. Meanwhile, Alexander attempted to carry on with business. He summoned his board for a crisis meeting regarding the dining program's PR fallout. Social media buzzed with articles praising his philanthropy, but also mocking his tone-deaf joke. Stock prices wavered. Investors whispered. He tried to respond with a public apology drafted by his PR team, but the statement rang hollow. I sincerely apologize if my words caused offense. He scanned the draft, but the corporate language made his stomach churn. He tore the draft to pieces, realizing that no polished statement could fix what he felt in his gut. Section 5. Descent into self-reproach. That evening, Alexander shut himself in his study. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city lights, but he saw only shadows. He poured himself a glass of scotch and stared into the amber liquid. Each sip burned, but the pain of his mistake burned more fiercely. He found the photo of 7-year-old Alexander again, the balloon-clutching child at the fair. That child never learned to laugh at his own cost. He pressed the frame to his chest, fighting the swell of guilt. How could I betray her? He thought. After she trusted me, I made her a punchline. The room felt suffocating. He turned on the desk lamp, illuminating an open notebook where he'd scribbled ideas for expanding the dining program. The words blurred. In a moment of despair, he stood and paced. Each step echoed on the marble floor. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering once more over her name. The cursor blinked. Maya. He closed the phone and dropped it on the desk. I don't deserve forgiveness. He whispered into the empty room. That night, she sat cross-legged on her bed, the glow of a single lamp casting soft shadows. She ran her fingers over the empty champagne flute she'd forgotten to discard. It stood like an accusation on her bedside table. She pressed her palms to her eyes, the memory of the gala's laughter and the sting of Alexander's words merging into a single, suffocating moment. I was foolish to trust him, she thought. No matter how kind he seemed, he still saw me as a story to be told. She pushed herself upright and struck a match, lighting a single candle. In its flickering light, she whispered, I am not your charity case. The words tasted bitter, but in saying them aloud, she reclaimed her dignity. Meanwhile, Alexander lay on the plush leather couch in his office, staring at the ceiling. He heard the distant hum of traffic, but it felt muted. The apology notes he'd sent to staff returned with polite but distant responses. He remembered how Maya's eyes had softened when he apologized in the service kitchen. Her forgiveness genuine and healing. Now he saw how much he'd taken that gift for granted. I hurt her, he thought, fists clenching. And for what? A cheap laugh in front of strangers. He turned toward his desk, retrieved a blank card, and wrote in a careful hand. Maya, I was cruel. You deserve better. Please allow me to make this right. He folded the card and placed it in his coat pocket, vowing to deliver it in person. The following morning dawned gray and somber. Maya stepped out into the city rain, hood drawn, boots splashing through puddles. She wrapped her scarf tighter, determined to leave the gala and Alexander behind. She had work at the cafe, tutoring in the afternoon, and classes at night. Her life would move forward, with or without him. Alexander watched the rain from his office window, the city's skyscrapers blurred by mist. He pressed his forehead against the glass. I must see her. He grabbed his coat and the apology card, then locked down the dining program's files. He bypassed his assistant's worried questions and exited the building, determined. Maya arrived at the cafe early, wiping down tables in silence. The only sound was the drip of the coffee machine. She arranged chairs, her movements precise, controlled. The cafe's morning light cast long shadows. She heard the front door chime as a customer entered, then a second chime closer. She glanced up and froze. Standing in the doorway, water dripping from the brim of his coat hood, was Alexander Hartwell. His face was pale, eyes wide with vulnerability. He held out his hand, and in it the small folded card. Maya, he said, voice unsteady. Please, may I speak with you? Her pulse galloped, her breath caught. She gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles whitening. He took a step forward, then another, closing the distance between their wounded hearts. She didn't reach for his hand. Instead, she met his gaze with fierce intensity. Do you understand why I'm angry? She demanded, voice trembling. The cafe's muted bustle faded behind her words. He swallowed. I do. I was selfish and cruel. Her lip quivered. You made me a punchline in front of everyone. You made me feel like a joke. Tears welled in his eyes. I'm so sorry. I never meant. She cut him off, stepping back. You never know what it's like to be me. You never do. Her voice cracked. You don't know hunger. You don't know loss. You don't know fear. He closed his own eyes, pain etched across his features. For a moment, they simply stood. Two broken people in the fluorescent glow of the cafe, the world carrying on oblivious to their agony. She turned away, tears spilling free. I can't do this, she whispered, voice thick. I was foolish to trust you. He watched her, chest heaving, as she wiped at her cheeks and walked toward the back room, disappearing through the swinging door. The bell above the cafe door tinkled again, but the sound felt hollow, an empty punctuation to the end of something precious. Alexander sank to the floor beside an empty table, head in hands. The apology card drifted from his fingers, landing at his feet. He closed his eyes against the sting of tears. His empire, his wealth, his power, they meant nothing here. The only thing that mattered had slipped through his grasp, and he had shattered it with one misguided word. The shatter point. Their deepest wounds laid bare, pride and pain driving a wedge between them. In Act 8, each will face a choice. Retreat into solitude or stretch out a hand toward the other. And we'll explore their internal reckonings as they decide whether to risk opening their hearts once more. Alexander Hartwell awoke before dawn in his penthouse loft, the expanse of the city below still shrouded in inky darkness. The silence pressed against him, more suffocating than any gala's applause. He sat at his glass-topped desk, the empty apology card before him like a challenge. Would he finally do what pride had kept him from, truly expose his heart, regardless of outcome? He replayed the scene in the cafe. Maya's fierce gaze, the quiver in her voice, the echo of her words. You never know what it's like to be me. He felt the weight of every syllable land in his chest. He rose, crossing to the floor-to-ceiling window. In the pale glow of streetlights, he saw his own reflection. Suit jacket draped on a chair, tousled hair, eyes rimmed red from sleep refused. He ran a hand through his hair and exhaled, decision crystallizing. I have to try. He grabbed the apology card, slipped on a dark overcoat, and descended the marble staircase, each step resolute. As he stepped onto the street, the city's hum greeted him. Horns, sirens, the distant rumble of subways. For once, he welcomed the chaos. It meant life, continuation, the possibility of making amends. Meanwhile, Maya Clark woke in her small apartment to the insistent beep of her alarm clock. The early morning light filtered through thin curtains. She stretched, stiff from sleeping in her work clothes, and prepared a pot of coffee. The apartment felt especially silent today, as if holding its breath for her next move. She thought of the gala, the joke, his apology card meant, but still undelivered. A flicker of anger stirred. He has no right to intrude on my life after what he did. Yet beneath that anger lay a trembling hope, a memory of the times he truly saw her. In the atrium, the blackout, the backstory unveiling. She closed her eyes, inhaling the bitter aroma of coffee, and whispered to herself, I won't go back to being vulnerable. Not yet. She grabbed her backpack, textbooks, notebooks, pen, and headed out. Today was classes, a tutoring session, then a late shift at the cafe. No room for distractions. No room for mistakes. At 7:15 a.m., Alexander parked his car 2 blocks from the community college, preferring to walk the rest. He adjusted the lapels of his overcoat. No suit, no flashy watch, just a man carrying a folded card and a resolve to face rejection. He exited the building, walking past students huddled around cigarette breaks, campus security officers scanning ID badges, the hum of departmental morning meetings. Each step reminded him of Maya's world, one he'd glimpsed only in fragments. At the college entrance, Maya darted past him, a blur of determination. She didn't see him, and he hesitated. He'd imagined stopping her with a flourish, but reality stilled his breath. She vanished inside. He approached the sign-in desk, where a bored receptionist looked up. Can I help you? She asked. Alexander cleared his throat. I'm here to see someone. The receptionist peered at him. You're not faculty. He offered her the folded card. It's for Maya Clark. Would you tell her I'm waiting outside? It's important. She scanned the card, his name in neat script, and placed it in an envelope. I'll make sure she gets it. He nodded, heart pounding, and stepped into the mild morning air, leaning against the exterior wall. Students streamed past, some on bikes, some on foot, each absorbed in their own worlds. He clutched the card in his pocket like a lifeline. Inside, Maya found her first lecture in a small seminar room. She slid into a seat near the back, setting her coffee on the desk. Moments later, the receptionist slipped the envelope onto her notebook. Maya's breath hitched as she recognized his handwriting. She opened the envelope, extracting the card. The words inside were simple, heartfelt. Maya, I was selfish and cruel. I never meant to make you feel like a spectacle. You deserve my respect, not my jokes. I can't undo the hurt I caused, but I can promise to listen, to learn, to honor your dignity. If you're willing, even for a moment, please meet me where we first sat. Tomorrow at noon, the wooden bench in the atrium. Sincerely, Alexander. Her fingers trembled over the paper. The classroom's hum faded as she stared at his words. She felt the familiar tug of hope and the sharper sting of pride. Should I? She asked herself. Or should I burn this and move on? Her gaze flicked to the coffee stain at the card's corner, an unintended mark of humanity. She folded the card and slipped it into her satchel, resolve settling. She wouldn't rush to answer. She needed time to choose. Over the next 24 hours, both characters grappled with their decisions. Maya's perspective. She spent the day tutoring with a focused intensity, yet each scribble on the whiteboard reminded her of Alexander's apology. That night, she replayed their shared moments on loop. The service kitchen, the laughter, the betrayal. She alternated between drafting a reply and smashing the paper beneath her coffee mug. Eventually, exhaustion overtook her, and she fell asleep clutching the card. Alexander's perspective. He convened an impromptu meeting with his executive assistant, Serena, instructing her to minimize press coverage until he could set things right. He revised policies for the dining program to give Maya full credit, independent leadership, ensuring she'd never be overshadowed by his spotlight again. He jotted notes for what he'd say if she gave him a chance. Listening, not lecturing. Then he sat alone in the atrium, watching the wooden bench at noon sun bathe the marble floor, waiting. The next day at noon, Maya stood at the atrium's entrance, her satchel slung over one shoulder and the card in her hand. The building staff glanced curiously at her. Students rarely trespassed here. She took a steadying breath and stepped onto the polished floor. Alexander rose when he saw her approach. He wore a simple sweater and slacks, no tie, no cufflinks. He moved to the bench, hands at his sides, vulnerability etched in his posture. She stopped 10 feet away, hands gripping her satchel strap. For a long moment, neither spoke. The atrium's bustle faded into a hush around them, a world reduced to 2 beating hearts. Maya broke the silence. Why here? She asked, voice steady but soft. He exhaled. Because I realize this bench isn't just wood and a backrest. It's the place where I first saw you, to offer you more than leftovers. It's where I first felt alive because of your presence. I wanted my apology to come with that memory." She studied his face, searching for insincerity. She saw only raw remorse and hope shining in his eyes. He continued, "I've changed the dining program structure. You'll have full autonomy. You'll be my partner, not my beneficiary. And I'll never make your story my punchline again." A tremor ran through her. His words weren't about ego. They were about honoring her dignity. Tears welled in her eyes. She took a step forward, heart pounding. She opened her mouth to reply, but then closed it, uncertain. Pride warred with longing. Faint sirens echoed somewhere far away, and in that distant sound, she felt the pulse of life inviting her to trust again. At last she exhaled, voice trembling. I need time. This doesn't erase what happened. But maybe I'm willing to try." He nodded, relief flooding his face. "I'll wait as long as you need." She met his gaze and, for the first time in days, allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "Thank you." They sat on the bench together, side by side yet not touching, each absorbed in their own thoughts. The atrium's light danced through the glass ceiling, painting patterns across their shoulders. Around them, life resumed. Midday meetings spilled forth, visitors wandered, the world carried on. But for Maya and Alexander, this moment marked a new beginning, an acceptance that vulnerability, when honored, can become the bridge to authentic connection. What decision stands between you and a second chance? Share your story below. Your courage to choose may inspire someone today. If you believe in redemption and healing, like this video and subscribe for the final act of our journey. The morning sun filtered through the atrium's glass ceiling in soft golden beams, illuminating every detail of the grand hall. A world of marble columns, polished floors, and that unadorned wooden bench at its heart. The bustle of weekday commerce had not yet begun. Cleaning staff wheeled carts of linens past, a lone security guard sipped coffee by the entrance, and an intern hurried in, briefcase in hand. But the space felt suspended in time, a sanctuary for what was about to unfold. Maya Clark arrived first, carrying a simple bouquet of daisies wrapped in brown paper. Her contribution to the day, a gesture of new beginnings. She wore jeans and a light sweater, a departure from both gala gowns and corporate attire. Just herself, comfortable in her own skin. Her heart fluttered, anticipation mingled with nerves. She approached the bench and placed the flowers on the seat, the petals bright white against the dark wood, a symbol of fresh starts. Moments later, Alexander Hartwell entered from the opposite wing, pausing when he saw the daisies. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded curve of lips, and approached slowly, hands tucked into his pockets. His simple chinos and open-collar shirt mirrored her casual style. They're on neutral territory, neither CEO nor struggling student, but two people meeting on equal ground. They stood facing each other, the daisies between them. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. A mutual recognition of how far they'd traveled from that first, tentative exchange. Then Maya spoke, voice clear and steady. "I brought these because I wanted today to feel like our choice, not just yours." He nodded, eyes warm. "I'm honored. And I brought something too." He reached into his coat pocket and produced a small, handcrafted wooden plaque engraved with their thematic motto. "Break bread, build bridges." The plaque's wood grain matched that of the bench, and the engraved letters caught the morning light. Maya's breath caught. "It's perfect." Their shared smiles erased any remaining distance. In that moment, the atrium ceased to feel like a labyrinth of status and wealth. It was simply the place where two lives intersected and transformed one another. They sat together on the bench, daisies and plaque nestled between them. Alexander reached for Maya's hand, slipping his fingers into hers, gentle, respectful, as if still learning the weight of touch. She responded by leaning her shoulder against his, a quiet affirmation that their partnership would be rooted in mutual respect. "I've finalized the dining program structure," he said. "It launches today. You're co-director. You'll oversee meal distribution, community outreach, and program growth. I'll be here to support, but the vision is yours." Maya squeezed his hand. "Thank you. I have ideas. We can partner with local shelters, integrate nutrition workshops, and maybe even host open forum lunches for people from all walks of life." He nodded enthusiastically. "Let's do it. And I'll arrange funding, logistics, everything. Your name first on press releases." She smiled, though the memory of past humiliation still lingered at the edges of her consciousness. But this time it felt different, an equal partnership, not a charity case. They rose together, stepping across the atrium to a large digital display announcing the program. Community Table Initiative, under the leadership of Maya Clark and Alexander Hartwell. Staff members and volunteers gathered around, applause breaking out as the program's mission scrolled across the screen. Every meal is an invitation to share our stories, connect our communities, and honor our shared humanity. Alexander guided Maya to a long table set up nearby, not gilded or polished, but sturdy and welcoming, borrowed from a community center. 2 simple place settings awaited. A paper tray of wholesome soup and bread for Maya, a linen napkin and ceramic bowl for him. Maya laughed softly. Back to our roots, huh? He grinned. In a way, yes. He lifted the soup ladle and poured equal portions into each bowl. The smell of hearty stew, vegetables, beans, fragrant herbs wafted through the hall. They sat side by side, just as they had that first day. Maya's voice trembled with emotion as she took a tentative sip. It's delicious. He nodded, savoring the warmth spread through his chest. It's about more than food, he said. It's about connection and respect. Between them, the hum of activity continued. Volunteers filling trays, community members arriving with hopeful smiles, children running past in bright jackets. Yet for Maya and Alexander, the echo of their first meal, the simple act of sharing, resonated anew, now amplified by purpose and partnership. As the Community Table Initiative launched, a diverse crowd gathered. A single mother with 2 toddlers, a retired teacher with a cane, an immigrant family shyly standing together. Countless faces weaving a tapestry of lives. Maya and Alexander moved among them, serving soup, exchanging names, listening to stories. Maya knelt beside an elderly man, handing him a tray. "What's your favorite memory of sharing a meal?" she asked. He smiled, eyes misty. "My grandmother's kitchen in the old country. We'd all pile in, little cousins underfoot, the table groaning with food, and laughter that echoed through the house." He tapped his chest. "Always felt like love lived there." Maya nodded, heart full. She turned to Alexander, who was comforting a weeping teenager who'd come alone and felt out of place. Alexander gently patted the teen's back, his voice soft. "Everyone belongs here." It was the moment pride met vulnerability, and community rose from compassion. This cycle, serve, listen, connect, continued throughout the afternoon. Every place setting became a story, every bowl a gesture of welcome. The initiative's success lay not in numbers, but in these moments. Eyes meeting across a table, hands brushing over bread, laughter bridging gap after gap. As dusk approached, Maya and Alexander retreated to the wooden bench, now adorned with daisies and the Break Bread Build Bridges plaque. They sat side by side in companionable silence, watching the last volunteers clean up. Maya took a deep breath. This is more than I ever dreamed." She paused, tears glistening. "And more than I ever thought I'd deserve." He turned to her, voice gentle. "You deserve every bit of this, and more." He reached into his pocket and extracted the apology card from Act 8. "I kept this," he said, handing it to her. "I wanted you to know it wasn't just words." She unfolded the card, reading his neat handwriting one more time. Then she folded it carefully and tucked it into her pocket. "Some things I'll keep close," she whispered. He nodded, eyes shining. "And some things we share together." A soft chime indicated the end of the atrium's public hours. Security escorted the last stragglers toward the exit. Maya and Alexander stayed seated, the bench now bathed in the orange glow of the setting sun. Maya pointed to the plaque. "Break bread, build bridges." She traced the engraved letters with her fingertip. "It's a promise." He extended his hand. "A promise I intend to keep." She placed her hand in his. Together, they rose, lifting the plaque and daisies. They moved to the bench's back, where Maya carved their motto into the wood with a pocket knife he'd lent her. The initials M+ adjoined beneath the words, marking the bench as their shared ground. As she worked, Alexander watched, heart full. When she finished, they stepped back to admire their handiwork. The worn wooden bench, once a symbol of loneliness, now bore the testament of healing and partnership. Later, on camera for their own channel segment, Alexander and Maya stood before the bench, addressing viewers worldwide. Alexander, smiling, "Every journey begins with a single step, and sometimes with a single question. Can I eat with you?" That question broke me out of my solitude and led me to rediscover what truly matters. Maya, softly, and it taught me that accepting help isn't weakness. It's an act of courage that can change two lives at once. Together, we invite you to share a meal, share your story, and build bridges in your own communities. They smiled and linked hands, the plaque and daisies at their feet. Behind them, the atrium gleamed, transformed not by wealth, but by compassion. What bridge might you build today? Who would you invite to share a meal? Share your ideas in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to take that step. If you believe in the transformative power of kindness, like this video, subscribe to Stories Always, and ring the bell so you never miss another tale of unexpected love. Together, let's break bread and build bridges, one meal at a time. As Maya and Alexander's community table initiative grows, they face new challenges. Can their partnership withstand public scrutiny, personal doubts, and the weight of scaling a movement? Subscribe so you can join us next time on Heartwarming Stories, always to find out.